Hello, and on today's show, I'm talking to Andy Gaught. He's a property investor with a background in tech, and he spent the past 7 years building a portfolio, systemizing what he does, and outsourcing a lot of his work to virtual assistants. We spend the next 30 minutes really just discussing the opportunities and possibilities of creating systems in your property related business and how you can actually outsource work effectively, and a lot of tips and tricks to get you started or to improve your existing systems or outsourcing. This is one not to be missed if you're involved in property, investing, purchasing, sourcing, managing, whatever it is. This one is definitely for you. Enjoy. So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day and this is Systemize Your Success. Hi Andy. Thanks very much indeed for coming down and having a chat with me today. Just kick off, give us 2 minutes into who you are and why on earth have you come and why are you talking to me today on this podcast?
Sure. Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, so my name is Andy Gaught, and I run a business called Asset Living. So I'm a property investor, but I've been investing for about the last 7 years, background in technology as well. And I just want to have a chat, Steve, with yourself just around, systemizing and outsourcing, because I've sort of really come to understand the power of that and the benefit it can bring to business.
Cool. No, I'm really glad you hooked up because I know you pinged over and you've been in our Facebook group for a while now, and so it's always nice to hook up with someone like yourself. And I thought it'd be really interesting just to have a chat about systems and hear it from a different perspective almost. And I reckon around 75% of our clients are in some way, shape, or form either property investors themselves, or they developers, or they've got investments that they use. And so I'm super familiar with property as a business. I mean, I have properties myself and have them for 20 years, but also from a coach as well. But from your side, so why do you think using systems is so important in property? And give us some examples of where you've had real success of systemizing parts of your property business?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, the first thing I sort of think about systems is they're just like a lever to be able to enable you to do so much more. So by using technology or other people, it frees up your time, it enables you to scale, it enables you to do so much more in your business, whilst also, reducing errors, getting stuff done quicker. So I know that through your stuff, Steve, I've sort of now got 4 virtual assistants. So I've got them doing everything from managing sort of my diary to creating social media content. And it's one of those slightly magical things where you hand something over to a VA, you go to sleep, and then when you wake up, it's done. So it's that whole use of other people's skills, other people's time. And, in business, it's also being able to focus on the most important things, and data scraping or doing design, either it's not your forte or you could be focusing on more important things. So I've really found that systems and outsourcing have brought immense benefit to me. Other things I've outsourced, things like handing over property management. So I've got a team that I have working for me, but the whole sort of tenant onboarding, tenant checkouts, what else? Sourcing. So finding properties both on market and off market. I'm sort of the higher added value level. So the VAs go and find information for me to review, and then I've got that sort of oversight of it, but I haven't had to do that manual work up front.
Yeah, and it just means you can process so many more properties or deals or whatever it is in your business that you happen to be doing and processing, that you as the business owner, before you eventually manage to remove yourself from that role as well. But in the meantime, for many small business owners, that's too far in the future to think about. So it's like, how do you right now get all of your time focused on making those critical decisions that really only you can make? And I think that, that the things you described there are just bread and butter for like my clients. Like literally right this minute, I am in the middle of helping a property sourcer to systemize their property sourcing pipeline. And so it's just like, stuff that I know it just lends itself so well to. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And the other thing I find is it's almost come into things with, I like calling it like a templated mindset or a systemized mindset, because actually so many things that we do are actually repeated. And when you start coming from a position of, have I done that before, or could I do that better? You realize that so many things are repeated. And then once you've gone and documented them or done a video or any sorts of recording, you can hand it off to somebody else. So yeah, systems are everywhere when you start looking for them.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure you've read some of the books like Michael Gerber, E-Myth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thought you might have done. Yeah, and I think the other thing that I always talk about with documentation, when people talk about systems, what's a system or whatever, it doesn't really matter how complex this stuff gets. The simplicity of actually just noting down, this is what I am doing today. This is the status quo in my business right now, because it's just the act of actually putting, not even pen to paper in the sense of actually having a notebook or something. It's like, I'm documenting the thing that I'm doing, the steps involved, whatever it is, however you capture that. Because once you've captured it, you can then improve it. And I think that's for me, was one of the big eye-opening moments. And it often is that when the penny drops for a lot of our clients, is when they go, they get it. They're suddenly like, oh yeah, now we can sort of like incrementally or iteratively improve something from now on forever, but only once they've started that baseline. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah, we had a classic process with our tenant onboarding, and it was sort of the very big bits. So, viewings, signing the contract, fees. But it was only by getting it down into some form of flow and some form of sort of diagram that then we sort of thought, well, we could chuck in some some text confirmations, or we could chuck in other bits. But it's only by having that visibility of the basics that, as you say, we could iterate on it, improve it, and bring a better experience for everyone involved in that process.
All right, so tell us a bit more about what you do and how you help people, and what is it that you use systems for, how you help people create systems, or a bit more about that, because I'm super interested to find out more.
Yeah, thank you. First I invest in property. So I use systems a lot myself in the sourcing, the acquisition, managing. A lot of things are flows. So whether it's an investor flow, taking them through the various stages, or through sourcing and making offers, etc. But also I'm a coach and mentor. So I help other investors. And it's amazing that before helping people, I always send out a questionnaire just to say, well, what do you want to cover in the mentoring? And I would say 9 out of 10 clients want help systemizing their business. I always mention, yourself, Steve, because there's just so much to it. And I think people come from a position of complication, especially when it comes to systems. And quite often people have got assumptions around what that means. So they think it's apps and it's coding and it's complicated and it's not really their thing. So that's why I always like to take people back to sort of the basics and just ask what a system is. And the brilliant analogy that I like is, I don't know, Steve, if you've ever seen sort of one of those really sort of keen DIYers, and in their sort of shed, they've got one of those pegboards on the wall, and they've got their hammer, and it's got a line drawn around the hammer, or they've got their sort of screwdrivers, and then they've got a line drawn on the screwdriver. I said, look, that to a certain degree is a system, because it speeds things up, because you very quickly know where stuff lives. You know how to reduce errors, because you can instantly see if something's in the wrong place. You can outsource it, because you could give people a whole load of tools and they could go and do it themselves based on the system that you've set up. So I think people, get bogged down in apps and technology. So I always sort of start off to say, what are you trying to achieve first? What's going to bring the business benefit to you? And quite often, I remember your advice, Steve, about, systemize things that are going to go and give you your time back. Don't systemize something that you're not doing at the moment anyway. It's focusing on what's going to give you the biggest help. And it's just really simple things. I talk about mise en place, within the cookery world, everything in its place. So even really basic things. So if you've got a lead that comes in through a landlord letter, where do you put that lead and how do you look after it? Or if you've got details of an estate agent, or if you've got details for a networking meeting, what system do you have just to go and look after those things? And quite often with my clients, I do think some of them, if they're more inclined to systemization, use it as a bit of procrastination as well. So it can be a bit, where are you investing, or what are you looking to invest in? I don't know yet, but I need to go make sure my CRM's set up, and it's all about, and it is a hard decision point as to, when do you start systemizing? And, sometimes people do it a bit too late. But I think that if you just come from a position of systemizing and thinking about, can I systemize this? Then you'll start to bring benefit to your business without using it as an excuse not to do what you should be.
Yeah. Okay. I can probably hold my hands up and admit guiltily that over the years I have procrastinated into creating far too many systems and overcomplicating it. So I now teach the opposite, but you basically, a good coach teaches people how to avoid the mistakes they made. And I think a lot of people say to me about systems as well as, oh, but you must be so organized. You must be the most organized person in the world, or everything must just spin perfectly for you. And it's like, no, quite the opposite. The reason I'm so damn good at systems is because I'm so damn disorganized that without them, my life would fall apart. And so, I've got to admit, to you saying that, I was just smirking to myself thinking, yep.
It rings a bell. Yeah,
totally. And I think the other take home from that, or thing just to really stress on for anyone listening to this, is you made the point with what you were saying about people overcomplicating what a system is, and that actually sometimes it's the simpler stuff that really makes the biggest difference, like where you save something, or where you put something in your shed, like that great analogy that you used. I think that's a really good one, because the systems I first created, if I go back sort of 15 years, and I think about my early days in property as a property manager, or property developer even, and so my student tenants, and once a year I did changeover for them, because it was an annual contract, and once a year I had to remember everything that I did the year before. And for the first few years, it was literally just like, it was like reinventing the wheel every 12 months. And that's when I first realized how important it was to create a system. And it was just simply a checklist, my first ever system. This is the stuff that I do once a year, so I don't forget to do anything important. And it all basically snowballed from there. And that was nearly 20 years ago. But it's that simple stuff, that first step, that I think people often over procrastinate. Think, I need to get this all singing, all dancing automation tool, or using Zapier or whatever. No, just a checklist. That's it. You're off.
And I think also people sometimes may think that systems are restrictive, or that they prevent creativity. But by having systems in place, it then gives you structure so that you can be more creative and have more inspiration in other times where you're not needing to rely on a system. Because if you can do something anyway, at any time, and anybody can do it, all of your time is sort of disorganized. Whereas if you know that on a Friday afternoon between 3 and 4, I pay invoices, or between 9 and 10 on a Tuesday morning, I search for properties, there's so much more structure, even with time blocking in your diary. It then gives you the headspace to be able to be more creative and think of other ways of doing things in other time. And I think that's so important, is that systems are not detrimental for perhaps some of the more creative people out there.
I think that's a massively important point. And just let's dwell on that for a second, because I think you picked up something that, again, is overlooked by people, but the value of having a system around your own time. So how do you help people and advise or coach people on time management, time blocking? Because I think it's a really interesting subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that tasks expand to fill the time that you give them. So many people will say, well, tomorrow I'm going to go and, let's say, analyze a deal. And if you give yourself 4 hours to do it, it will take the 4 hours. And if you give yourself 30 minutes, it will take 30 minutes. So the first thing I always advise people to do is to identify the key things that they need to do on a daily, weekly basis. So, within my property world, it's sourcing and it's finding investors. It's very simple. It's those two big pillars of property. And then it's making sure that you time block, or you allocate time to those important activities. There's a great sort of business speaker, Michael Hyatt, and he talks about making margin within your diary, because if you don't time block and put margin into your diary, things will blur and take over that margin that you've given yourself. And another great analogy is just a school timetable. At 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon that you have PE. So just sort of set aside those key pieces of time where you need to do those key critical tasks, and also try and give yourself less time than you think you need. So if you think to review Rightmove once a week, it's going to take an hour, just try it in 45 minutes. And there's the old Pomodoro technique, where you set yourself a very specific task. You give yourself 25 minutes with a 5-minute break at the end. You get rid of all distractions and you just focus on that one task. And it's amazing how much you'll try and beat the clock. And I think that just simple techniques like that can make people so much more effective with their time.
Yeah, I'm nodding away for anyone listening because I massively agree with the Pomodoro technique. Is something that I actually wish I use it more, and I don't. I forget to use it on a daily basis. But when I do have something that I know I've got a time limit on, so I've got a couple of hours, I've just got to nail something. Then I've got a little thing called a focus timer on my Windows desktop, and I think it's called Focus 10 for anyone interested. Let me just hover over it now and I'll have a look. Yeah, Focus 10, and it's just a Pomodoro technique timer. And just switching that on, suddenly it's like someone's put the rocket boosters up to your productivity, and somehow you just get stuff done, whereas otherwise it can just roll, like exactly you just said, really, really succinctly just describe that. Basically just one thing rolls into the next. I'd say one thing I've also done myself, I've talked about this in previous podcast episodes, is that I started doing this because I wanted to go skiing on a Friday, which is that basically I cancelled my Fridays. So nothing is ever booked on a Friday for me. And that gives me the ability to then, whenever the snow is good, I can just jump, I can book the bus, 12 o'clock at night on a Thursday and then be on it at 5 a.m. on a Friday. So I can't do that for meetings. So it started off like that, and it's carried on to be me just saying, well, if I can do it, for 4 months of the year, why not do it for the whole year? And then I started doing it for Mondays as well. So now I don't have anything on a Monday or Friday booked other than the stuff that is important to me in my business. And so that's the time, we talked about putting your gym class in for your whatever it is. So that's when I do that. I have a Mondays as my specifics, and Fridays is my mopping up day. And, if I want to take the day off, I can. So yeah, I like that, all those things.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So tell me a bit more about how you help people, because you talked about a bit of the systems and stuff that you might do in your own business. Is there any other tips or anything that you, maybe stuff that's not specific to property, maybe it's just more business, or it could be specific to property. A lot of our listeners are property people, so that's fine too. But any more tips or advice or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think that let's talk a little bit about the virtual assistants, or the other side, I suppose, in the outsourcing. I think no matter how many times I was told it, get a virtual assistant before you think you need it. And of course I ignored that. And of course I'm now reaping the benefits having brought them on board. Now, something actually from yourself, Steve, was your sort of interviewing technique around getting them to record videos and sort of speeding that sort of process up. Because I do think there are companies that will go and find virtual assistants for you. I've not had much success with those. So I did take the whole sort of process on board myself. And they've now got a financial controller, I've got a social media, I've got a sourcing coordinator, executive assistant. But some tips are, firstly, be very clear around the type of job role. So rather than a virtual assistant, be clear in your mind what you want to use them for, because more often than not, people say, I've got a virtual assistant and now I don't know what to do with them, which is really unfortunate, because they can be really, really useful in your business. So have a clear sort of job description or work that you want them to do. I think also don't rush into it. You want it to be a long-term relationship, because it's such a painful process and time-consuming process to find people. You don't want to onboard them, spend a couple of weeks, and then you realize that it's not right. And one tip in terms of my sort of workflow with virtual assistants has been, and this was taken from a good friend of mine, Jackie, and she talks about the Marmite stage of a virtual assistant onboarding process, where you lay everything down on the table with the virtual assistant. So this is how much you're going to be paid. These are your hours. This is the software that you use. This is the meetings that we do. And you lay the whole thing down on the table prior to offering. And then you say, are you happy with that? There are no surprises. There's nothing after spending a month working for you. And then once that's all been sort of explained, they can't say there was anything that they were unaware of when they take the job. So I've done that with all of my most recent hires, and they've been more than happy with it. And then they're all really enjoying the job. And I think with virtual assistants also is, when I used to work at Sky, and I remember one of my bosses used to say he had a staff member who was good at turning the handle, which is very much, they just used to run a process. But I found with my virtual assistants, although they do have specific job roles, that, including them in developing, finding out what additional skills they want to learn, helping them to grow within their role, helps with retention. It really helps with their job satisfaction. And I've made it very clear that I'm very happy to pay them more as their skills grow, because the acquisition process can be so painful, that I'd much rather make sure they're happy, check in with them, help them to grow in their role, so that then they stay with me for a long time. But yeah, definitely come to your business with a templated mindset. What processes am I doing now, which I shouldn't be in the future? And then be ready to hand those over to a virtual assistant earlier than you think.
Cool. All right, those are fantastic tips again for hiring and onboarding, and I totally agree with all of them. We have our own recruit hiring system and onboarding process and training systems, and all those literally you just described them very well. So it's we're on very much the same page, which means it must be a good way of doing it. If and I was speaking to John Jonas the other day on who's the owner of Online Jobs.ph. And he was saying the same things, and so we were just having this conversation, saying, "Oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we do that." So yeah, we must be all on the same page, or we must be on the right page, I should say, if we're all on the same page. So that's cool. Anything else you wanted to add before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, I think that in terms of systemization and outsourcing, everything like that, is don't let it intimidate you. If it's not, different people have different personalities, they've got different things that they're aligned with. So it's incredibly powerful. But if you do need help or assistance, reach out to people like Steve or myself, to do what we can. And the other thing is, and I wrote this in my notes, is be very wary of recommendations on apps, because different people have got different things that they like using. And different people are also in different stages in their business. The whole social media, which CRM should I use? Some people may have 0 leads, and some people may have hundreds of thousands on an email list. So it's always just making sure that you do what's right for yourself and your business. And very often what gets you here won't get you there, and you'll need to change things out in the future. So just make sure that you are understanding what you're implementing with your system. Seek out help, so that you can do the right thing for your business, and then you'll wonder why you didn't do it so much earlier.
Fantastic advice. I really, really like that. And I'm going to actually just expand on that a little bit, because it is something that I am very passionate about, and that is about, but mainly because I've made so many mistakes with apps over the years and wasted many thousands and thousands of pounds and thousands of hours as well. And CRM is one of my bugbears, and you never get it right is the problem. And because you just described very well that the stage that you're at in your business now isn't the stage you'll be at in 5 years, in 10 years. So you will have to change. So don't try to predict where you'll be in 10 years and buy the best CRM for that moment. Buy the best CRM for now, and what you can see in the next 2-3 years max, because you'll never know where your business goes and the avenues you'll go down, and what you'll need and your needs, your specific feature needs will be in a few years' time, whether that's task management as well. And one of the things we switched after a few years doing in our business is we're not stopping teaching about specific apps, but not stopping recommending specific apps. We now recommend the features of the apps that we use, because and why we think those features are so important. Because there's nothing to say that another company won't bring out an app with those features and more. So we would be wrong to say, no, that's rubbish. So we say, look, these are the key things you can't live without for these reasons. If you can find another app that's just as good as the one we recommend, then great. But if you can't, then use the one we choose. So,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, talking about apps, Andy, I like to always finish up these interviews with some recommendations of your favorite 2, 3, 4, whatever apps that you use, or browser plugins, or things that you can't live without.
Sure, absolutely. So the first one, actually, I mean, personally, and this isn't a recommendation, I use Asana for task management across, myself, my virtual assistants.
Feel free
So
to
the first one,
it's brilliant.
yeah, it's pretty good. So my first one has to be not just Asana, but the Asana app, because I have various sort of boards for my team members, and they can put things where work is blocked. So the ability to answer questions or unblock work on the go, so no matter where I am, very quickly through the Asana app, is really powerful when it makes sure that nothing gets stuck that team members are working on. So yeah, that's the first one. The next one, and this almost goes back to one that you mentioned, Steve. So I use something called Freedom, and Freedom is a little plugin for browsers. You can also get it for mobile, and it's basically a content sort of blocker. So I set various times during the day where I can't get on social media, where I can't get on YouTube. So in terms of the whole focus and building better habits, sometimes we subconsciously just jump onto Facebook or onto YouTube or other websites. So Freedom, I think, is only 20 quid a year or something, and you can set windows where it blocks access to a whole host of websites and other things, just to make sure that you focus on what's most important. So Freedom is really good. And then lastly, security across all of our businesses is so important. So the last one is LastPass. So again, being able to have really, really strong passwords, on my phone, uses face recognition, and then there's a master password on my laptop. But being able to use really strong passwords for all websites that I don't have to remember, and I can share them with team members if necessary, has to be my third and final recommendation.
Good recommendations. As you probably know, I highly recommend both Asana and LastPass. I've not heard of Freedom before, but it's something that I will definitely get my team to use. I'm pretty good. I don't really go on social media, funnily enough. I seem to be on it all the time, but I'm actually very rarely on it for personal reasons. So I'm quite good with that anyway. Cool. That's awesome. The title of this podcast is Systemize Your Success, but what does success mean to you?
So I think success is being able to do what I want, where I want, when I want, and with who I want. So I think quite often, people sometimes, go for the default financial freedom or any of that sort of thing. So it is freedom, but for me, very specifically, it's being able to do what I want, where I want, when I want, with who I want.
Cool. I like it. And finally, who else do you think will be a great guest on this podcast?
So there's a fantastic YouTuber actually called Ali Abdaal, and Ali, he used to be a doctor at Cambridge, but he's got 3 million people on YouTube now, and he used to be a doctor whilst also running his YouTube channel, set up numerous businesses, but he is prolific also at his systemization. He's now got a team of 15 staff. He's really reining back what he does in terms of processes. So he's more the front of the business, and his team does everything behind the scenes. So he's really inspirational. I think he'd be brilliant for the podcast, Steve.
Cool. I will definitely check him out. I've not heard of him before. So what was his name again?
Ali Abdaal.
Ali Abdaal. I'm going to check him out right now, and go and check out his YouTube channel. Awesome, Andy. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for this was you reaching out to me, so I massively appreciate you doing that. It's been really, really interesting speaking to you today, and I'm sure listeners have got massive value from this. So thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant.
And where should people find you, search you out if they want to find out more about what you do and how you can help them?
Great. Yeah. So my website is www.asset-living.com, or they can also find me on YouTube and Instagram. Just search for Andy Gaught.
Cheers, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Steve. Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. I'm well aware there are hundreds of great business podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to this one, and for that I am truly grateful. Hopefully what you heard today took you one step closer to building a successful business so you can share your passion with the world and serve an ever-growing number of people. If you got value out of today's episode, then so will someone else that you know. By sharing with others what has helped you along your way, you will grow your influence and be the guy or girl that everybody wants to know. So please hit the share button right now, and also remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. It's impossible for me to cover absolutely everything in these podcasts, so please do head over to systemisedyoursuccess.com right now and download the show notes, transcriptions, and some of my best frameworks and systems for free. Thanks again for tuning in and being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, this is Dr. Steve Day, and you've been listening to Systemize Your Success.